Evening all. I'm not going to bore you to death, but I just have a couple of thoughts on the Anglo tapes. First of all, Vincent Browne on TV3 asked the question of Fionnán Sheahan of the Irish Independent of how long the paper had the tapes, and Sheahan launched into a spat over something completely unrelated, and it was specifically to refuse to answer the question because the tapes are 5 years old or 4 years old, whatever it is, right? How long have the Independent had them? Have they had them 2 weeks, 6 weeks, 6 months, 2 years? It's a legitimate question and it should be answered. But he refused to answer it. Now the other thing is the tapes are part of Garda evidence in an investigation into the possibility of criminal activity in the banks. Okay. How did the tapes get from the Gardaí to the Independent? Were they given by the Gardaí to the Independent under instruction, perhaps, of the Minister for Justice? Were they stolen by the Independent from the Gardaí? Nobody has asked the question. I haven't heard anybody, clamouring for a Garda investigation into how evidence in an ongoing investigation could be released into the public domain through the media. Now we can understand leaks from government and press offices and strategic things like that, but this is the Gardaí. This is the Garda Síochána, the force of law in the state. Right? Evidence has been taken from them and supplied to the media. Okay, so when was that done? How long has he been sitting on it? If the Independent has had this information for a year, 2 years, whatever, why have they sat on it so long? Now Sheahan said that they had to spend time in normal journalistic practice of verifying sources and corroborating evidence and reports. That doesn't stand up. This is two identified people in a recorded conversation. There's nothing to be verified. You hear what you hear. There's nothing to be corroborated by a third party. This is two people talking on a phone, right? So that defence is out the window. If they've sat on this for a length of time, why have they sat on it? Were they told to sit on it? Why bring it out now? Were they told to bring it out now? They're all savagely important questions, and that brings me on to the next point of what's going on around this story, okay, that affects it. Before the tapes became public through the Independent, we had Enda Kenny in Dáil Éireann calling for the abolition of the Seanad, and other people calling for the abolition of the Seanad. Okay, now he wants an Oireachtas inquiry. Now, if you get rid of the Seanad, that means it's Dáil Éireann that controls parliamentary inquiry into these matters, and when it's the Dáil that controls it, you can be guaranteed that the government control it. So these are the politicians and the House of Public Representatives responsible, hugely responsible and complicit in what happened, investigating what happened. That's not democracy. Get rid of the Seanad, this country is totally fucked. Because, we have situations where governments have an unhealthy majority in Dáil Éireann and there's no Seanad. Legislation will be railroaded through, there'll be no stop on it, and there'll be no way to pull the brakes on a government rampant on its own agenda or the agenda of its own masters. Okay, that's plain and simple. So this call for an Oireachtas inquiry and then also abolishing the Seanad, that all fits part of the same story. Now, Enda Kenny is a public official. He has no control or say in the operations of the Garda Síochána, supposedly. Okay, so therefore he has no right to remove this legal investigation from the Garda Síochána into an Oireachtas inquiry or any other inquiry. That's interference with a Garda investigation. which is illegal, and it's an abuse of power and an abuse of public office. And these are huge, huge issues. And don't be distracted by the content of the tapes, the scandal, the rogue trading, whatever. Don't be distracted by that. Look at the big picture. The story behind the story. Not what the story is about, but what the bigger agenda is about, and where this thing ends up. Because if we end up with a political system with one house that has greater powers than the Garda Síochána, then I'm sorry, but I would rather live in Stalinist Russia. Because there's no fucking difference. And a media that is in bed with the politicians. So the politicians are riding the arse off or the bankers are riding the arse off the politicians. Politicians are riding the arse of the media. Politicians are riding the arse off the Garda Síochána. And I separate the Garda Síochána from Michael Callanan because I lump him in with the politicians. And in the meantime, with all this sex going on, ordinary people are forgotten about, ignored, abused, rejected, silenced, given no justice. Take the power back, folks.